Did you know that 99% of the ADCs make at least one itemization mistake? Today, I will try to explain you which components to buy as ADC first, so that you will never make a mistake ever again. Let's take for first example a Jinx build. So we start with Exoptics. Exoptics is a really interesting item. The build path is decent, but you gotta be really careful about it. Let's suppose that you back with 1k 300 gold. Would you buy the Nunquiver or would you buy pickaxe and then one longsword as well? The difference will be that with pickaxe and one longsword, you would have 35 AD. While with only Nunquiver, you would have only 15 AD and 20% critical strike. How do we value critical strike? Usually critical strike, it's a late game statistic. Unless your champion has some weird synergy with it, you're basically praying that the critical strike will happen when you want it. And it's really hard to make it work consistently. Objectively speaking, in general, you will always find yourself to have more AD as the correct choice. So if you can buy more AD, just like in general, longsword, pickaxe, it will always be better than buying just Nunquiver and having less AD. Because once again, unless your champion scales with crit, usually crit is a late game statistics. Critical has the best advantage at 75%. So if we understood this starting part, buying Nunquiver even if you have 1k 300 gold is objectively worse than buying pickaxe and longsword most of the times again. There are some exceptions. Some people mention Ashe, some people mention Tristana. Those champions, they can easily go Nunquiver anyways. From here, we have either first item or shoes. And that's another important question that many people have, and they don't really know which one is better. So let's suppose that you have closed the first item. So we closed Exoptics and we have the 300 gold boots. Now, if you have the gold, do you go for Zeal or do you go for closed boots? So do we actually close the boots or do we go for the Zeal item? I give you 3 seconds to think about it. The answer is that you should go for Zeal. Zeal gives you movement speed equal almost to the boots, so you're not losing out on too much movement speed, which is eventually what we don't want to lose, right? In the end, Berserk Greaves, they give attack speed and movement speed. So does the Zeal, it gives both attack speed and movement speed, but the main difference is that you get 50% critical strike. If we adapt the 25% critical strike of the first item, and we adapt the 50% of the critical strike of Zeal, our DPS increases by a ton. So that's why we don't want to close shoes in this case. We want to go for Zeal instead. So first item, Zeal and boots is ideally what we want. Of course, if you don't have enough gold, you don't really want to go cloak only. Let's suppose that you don't have enough gold. You don't want to go critical cloak instead of like closing boots. So you can close boots in that case, but it's just for you to understand. If you have the decision between the 2 items, you should always go Zeal instead of Berserks. How do I itemize Infinity Edge? Of course, this is one of the easiest. The first item that we will love to have is BF Sword, raw AD damage, really good. If we can't buy it and we can't afford it, we go for Pickaxe, and then we go for Cloak. Cloak is really bad as an item, even if you have 50% crit, because we still need to stack a bit of AD. When you have Exoptics and Phantom Dancer, you still lack a lot of AD compared to other champions, so you would love to stack some AD first, because your critical damage is based on your AD. And if your base AD is really low, you're not really scaling it up. Now, here comes the hard part. I see many people falling on this. So if we count properly, we have 25% here, 50% here, 75% here, and Nunquiver would put you close to 95%. Do you actually need it? If you wanna go for raw damage on a single target, having 95% crit surely does make a lot of difference. But keep in mind that technically 75% is already sweet spot. So in this case, you can go for Last Whisper. Now let's take another example. Let's suppose that we use the build that I use. I'm currently playing Havre / on Jinx, which is a non-crit item. In this case, I don't have crit on the first item. So as I buy Phantom Dancer and Infinity Edge, I am at 50%, and with Lord Dominic I will reach 75. Since reaching 75 is the sweet spot, in this case, Nunquiver is better than Last Whisper. So if you understood that properly, you basically want to buy crit if you are below 75%, and you want to buy Armor Pen if you are above 75% when you're going for Lord Dominic. That's the golden rule that you want to keep in mind. So if you're going for a full crit build, most of the times you would rather go for Armor Pen. But if you rush an item that has no crit, there are many in the game now, I can't really think about them, you wanna go for the crit piece first. From here, any other item is filler, so it doesn't really matter as long as you buy it and you are not completely screwing up from like a situational item perspective. In this case, you can ask me down in the comments if you have like a a position or like a game where you wanted to know what exactly to buy as a situational item, that's completely different. But today we watch how to buy core items and in which order. Let's suppose that we're playing Kai'Sa, for example. Will you prefer having AP or AD at the start of the game? The answer to many ADC champs is to always go AD. First of all, because you have more pushing power, and because you can also last hit under tower in case you have an hard lane. Let's suppose you buy AP, but you're always getting pushed against a Caitlyn. How do you actually farm under tower? So AD is one of the best statistics in the early game, because it gives you pushing power, it gives you the ability to move, and also to last hit under tower. Those are like the most important things, since having damage, just like generally speaking, makes you a threat. While if you go for AP at the start of the game, well, that's not exactly what you want. Of course, your passive as Kai'Sa would deal some damage, but it's not the same thing. So keep in mind, when you have to decide which components to start with, usually raw AD is the best statistics, while everything else is kind of like minor, especially AP and attack speed. Attack speed tends to be really bad unless you have any type of multiplier in your build that actually makes it valuable to do so. Let's take, for example, Senna. Would you pick attack speed percentage on Senna early game? I give you 3 seconds. The answer is no. You have really low attack speed. So increasing your attack speed, which is already low, by a 20% does not increase anything at all. So even in this case, if you're playing Senna, especially the new build, you wanna rush pickaxe possibly. Going for Scout's Slingshot will delay a lot your spikes, and it will make your pushing power almost non-existent, making it really hard for you to farm, and to eventually win the laning phase. So if you understood all of that, basically, when we wanna go static, we're gonna go for pickaxe, second, other wisp, and third, Scout's Slingshot into closed static. That's how we do it. Now, here's another important decision. When we're going for Ginso, do we go for pickaxe or do we go for recurve bow? That's another important decision, and this is mostly based on the type of comp that you have and the type of ADC that you have. Let's suppose, again, I have a champion like Varus, and I close static, and I don't have a Lulu, I don't have anything that actually increases my DPS. I'm still playing a little tempo build, which means that some attack speed is always like welcome, and we have static which increases my attack speed a lot already, and then we can add a recurve bow on top of it. Surely my DPS will be really high. But who am I playing against? Am I playing against a comp that I can consistently kite? If I can consistently kite the enemy comp, going recurve is usually the right choice. But you also need the time to auto them while doing that. So keep it in mind. Usually I will say that AD is always better when you have no time to actually click the enemies. Just imagine a Rengar build, something like Rengar. Now, Rengar has 600 AD and 100% crit. As he jumps towards the enemy and he leaps towards him, he is gonna one-shot the character right away. And that's the same concept for AD. If you stack a lot of AD, the fight is gonna be quite fast because you're just completely exploding the guy. While if you're going for an on-hit build or you're itemizing a lot of attack speed, you're saying, if you dare to fight against me, I will win in the long fight because I have more DPS than you. So just keep it in mind when you're playing an on-hit build, you can go for the AD traits, so AD components for short trade, or on-hit traits if you know that you want to play a long fight. Another example, I'm playing Varus against Jhin. I know that Jhin has only 4 shots, and my best advantage would be to out-DPS him by having more consistent damage with out-attacks. So in this case, recurve will be better than pickaxe, because we have more potential on the negative side of the enemy. So it's not always a yes or no in this case. It heavily depends on the type of champion that you have, on which scaling you have, and what the enemy plays out on. From the third item onwards, so from Terminus onwards, every item is filler, you can go for whatever you want, and you should always decide based on the enemy comp. On each champions, they are currently the hardest ones to itemize, and it will be really hard to generalize all of them. But as a general rule of thumb, as you understood, prioritize AD, then AP, and then sort of like attack speed once you have a really decent threshold from 1.0 onwards. Just do not stack attack speed right away, because else you will have a really bad pushing power or no damage at all in the short trade. Did you guys enjoy this video? Did you find it helpful? Let me know down in the comments, and see you in the next video. Bye!